And once again, good evening, and welcome back to the Shadow Gallery. I am, as always, your host, James Donnelly. And, well, to complete the prophecy, what was started last night will be finished tonight, and that is the real and full edition of this week's New Comics, bitches! So, wow, there was a lot of good stuff this week. There was a lot of comics this week. There's a lot of really excellent comics. This was a tough week, and this was a great week for the most part. There were some that were like, but more often than not, the books were very much either great or above average. There were a lot of would-be picks of the week here. So I'm just going to start running it down and see what you agree or don't agree with. So the first one that I'm going to be talking about tonight is my least favorite book of this week, which I know that some people will probably find incredulous, but it's true. And that is Wolverine and the X-Men number 21. Now, it's not so much that I have a problem with the book itself, because the book, as we have it, opens up. We have all the students in the Institute are just kind of goofing off, doing whatever they want, and it's because there's no teachers around. What happened to them all? I don't know. Well, at least I don't know until I read further into the book. And I see that, as we see, that that Frankenstein circus has indeed come to town, and somehow, some way, well, we do find out, all of the teachers have become carnival attractions or carnival freaks, from obviously Wolverine. He's a clown here. Warbird is a knife thrower. Kitty is her target. Of course, knives just pass right through. Beast is just called Beast Master, which I thought was kind of fun. And he just works with all of the kind of animals attack him, and he kind of rebuffs them. Storm is an escape artist. So they all have roles that even Dupe is there. I thought that was really fun. He's just kind of passing out peanuts. And of course Toad is there too, and he's still doing his janitorial thing in a not very nice way. Rachel is there as a fortune teller in a particularly funny moment. So on its own, and then we see, as of course, we see the Hellfire Club. We see, more importantly, kind of young Frankenstein, if you will, is still working with with Heidi and the priest, his Robo Priest. And, him and Kilgore, they have, just their kind of frenemy banter. Kilgore, of course, just making off like he is the smartest guy in the room. This issue, and of course, then you have the kids actually coming to the carnival and seeing their teachers like this. Of course, Quentin thinks this is the greatest thing ever. But we also have Frankenstein, and we see how exactly all of the townsfolk and how the X-Men themselves are being hypnotized. And it's particularly unsettling. But really, my biggest, and Jason Aaron, of course, he brings the funny. There were some parts of this that were fun. It's a good read, but, and I don't know if Jason Aaron was trying to pay an homage to this, or if he just kind of flat kind of ripped it off. Now, Jason Aaron is a guy that I believe is pretty smart, so I don't think it's a ripoff. I think it's more of an homage to way back when just about when Chris Claremont started his run. I'm sorry, John Byrne started working with Chris Claremont when they had an issue where all of the X-Men were carnival freaks. So this was all done by Mesmero. This is issue, I think, Uncanny X-Men issue 111. So that, to me, was like, that was more serious. This is more fun. But the point is that I've read this issue before. Of course, you know, it has some twists, it has some turns, it has some, like I said, some pretty unsettling moments. But, again, it just, more than anything, it just felt like I have read this issue before, and the other one, they both work in their own context, but this one, like I said, just felt a little too blatant to me, without it kind of directly tying into that idea somehow, that somehow Mesmero is behind this, you know, pulling some strings. That would have been a nice touch. Because then we would have, okay, well, but nobody does, you know, no villain tries to do the same trick twice. But so that was it for me. I just thought that, you know, while being good, it felt unoriginal. So that's where I'm coming from with this issue. So I give this a 3 out of 5 because, you know, kind of dipping into the same well twice. Especially when, you know, one of these issues, at least to me, was still somewhat fresh in my mind because I love the Claremont Byrne stuff, and I find myself rereading it a lot. That this just didn't work as a whole. So moving along. So we have one of the big #1s this week. And that is Captain America #1. Now, of course, we have here, of course, Ed Brubaker is gone, and Rick Remender has taken over this title. Also, John Romita Jr. is on art. So, you know, getting two of the you know, kind of quote unquote superstars of Marvel together to redo, you know, to put Captain America in a new context. So we have those ingredients with Remender and Romita. So the book starts off, it is in the 20s, and we see, we're confronted with the Rogers family, as you know, the father is trying to get work, but the foreman, he doesn't like the Irish. You know, this was a problem for us folk back in the day. But we also get to see what a total prick his father was. Now, this is something that I do kind of have a problem with. Not because I always thought that he was a great guy, but I thought that, because I knew that ultimately his mother, that Steve's mother, was more kind of like, she was the kind one, she was the, you know, she was the frail one, but, you know, we have that kind of turned on its ear here when he, you know, when the father kind of, you know, Steve is hiding under the kitchen table, crying and just covering his ears, while his father is basically beating the shit out of his mother. But we see her kind of inner strength as, you know, she teaches him she teaches Steve a valuable lesson about life, and of course, all she's really trying to do is get, you know, get her husband off of his ass so that he can go get a job. You know, just to keep looking, and you know, it's the rule is, you know, always get back up. And then we skip to the present day, and we have this very kind of Bond-esque opening in which Cap is on board this B-52 that is plummeting towards the Earth and at the helm of this is an eco-terrorist called the Green Skull. And, he's, kind of a goofy villain, but also a deadly one. Cap rectifies the situation pretty quickly. And it's a nice opening. It gives it a nice, it creates kind of a new perspective for Cap, but of course not completely abandoning any of the narrative that came before it. So we have then this moment with because it's Cap's birthday. He's 90 years old, and I'm not quite sure how that one worked out, but whatever. Because I figured he'd be, well, I mean, he is just a kid back in 1926, so, maybe he, because the book opens in 1926, so it's, so he didn't look like a 4-year-old to me, but he might have been. So, anyway, so he's 90 years old, and he and Sharon, of course, is there to kind of give him his presents. Maybe a couple of presents, if you know what I mean. And she essentially, there's kind of a proposal there. They seem to want to get married, but of course Sharon is having some difficulty with the fact that that Steve Rogers is also Captain America, and having trouble kind of with that. He will always be Captain America, and he will, well, obviously we've seen different Captain Americas through the ages, but he as long as he's alive, he will always be Captain America. And so just working with that, but there's they uncover, S.H.I.E.L.D. uncovers, of course, this strange plot which involves this mysterious train, which there's only room for one, so Cap decides to get on board, and they are whisked away, and Cap finds himself in this really bizarre, almost like Inferno, X-Men Inferno-esque type of place. It's definitely not Earth, wherever it is that he's gone, and he finds himself as a prisoner of, ultimately, who we find to be Arnim Zola. And he is in a place called Dimension Z. And it all has to do with Zola is trying to extract blood from Cap so that he can use it to, again, kind of replicate the super soldier serum in order to bring one of his children that he's created to life. Cap, of course, remembering that lesson, always, get up, always get back up. He breaks free. He, gets himself out. But it seems at first that he has killed one of these two children. There's this little girl and this infant boy. But of course, it's revealed that he has not, in fact, killed the boy. In fact, he has saved the baby, the infant. But he is, he's stuck in Dimension Z. He has no idea where to go. He just knows that he needs to get to a place of safety. And that's kind of where we leave off, is him, with the child in his shield, which I thought was just kind of a nice touch there. But ultimately what's going on here is that we see kind of a new direction being laid out for Cap here. Brubaker kind of played with some weird ideas on the Cap title. Obviously, most specifically, I think, with the first arc that he did with the whole Codename Bravo and Jimmy Jupiter and everything like that. But this is obviously, it's like, it's another dimension, and it's, these weird kind of, alien looking beings and everything like that, and Arnim Zola is there, and it's like, what the hell is going on? So it's a good opening, but it's a really weird direction to take. Now, I know that Remender said that he wanted to talk a little bit more about the Depression and Cap's existence during that time. So that is something I'm kind of looking forward more looking more forward to than kind of this weird, almost outer space science fiction type of stuff that Remender seems to want to do. So I give this a 4 out of 5. It was, like I said, it's a really good opening. J.R. Jr.'s art looks better than it has in a really long time. I mean, because most of the issues that I've read of his over the last couple of years have felt really rushed, and it seems like, okay, well, he really took his time putting the art down for this issue. So, it's the first time I really liked his art in a long time. So, again, good start. Let's see if they can keep it up. Moving along, Ultimate X-Men number 18.1. Again, now this is a good, this is a pretty good example of a 0.1 issue, because we do have a good jumping on point for people who are not familiar with what's going on here. Basically we have, we open with Kitty being interrogated, if you will, by an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. We don't know exactly who. It's not put forth exactly, who this is, but they're being questioned about what's going on. This event that happened. And what we have here is that, Kitty has, of course, become kind of the de facto figurehead of kind of the mutant movement in the United States, at the very least. And, her kind of agreement with President Captain America has ruffled some feathers amongst the mutant community. And, of course, they are offering a mutant cure, basically to any mutant that wants one. So again, we're seeing some examples of what Kitty was afraid of, that by making a political agreement, by cutting a political deal for safety and protection, that she has somehow, that she's maybe leading the mutants towards a genocide of one type or another. And of course, this all gets exacerbated when we find out that the one that we've always had some questions about, which is Husk, because going back to the whole thing with how did she get out of of kind of the quote unquote concentration camp, whatever you want to call it, during the whole Divided We Fall, United We Stand arc. She basically turns herself to Steel, and sets off a massive, almost basically a suicide vest if she hadn't turned herself to Steel, and it kills a lot of mutants who were standing in line to get the cure. So this, of course, only continues to hurt the mutant cause. And she's saying stuff like Stryker was right, mutants need to die, and so again, all of this affecting everyone. But more specifically, in this particular issue, we have this kind of tete-a-tete between Kitty and Nomi from back in who's staying in New York in the Morlock tunnels, taking care of the kids. And she's arrived. She's now known as, she now calls herself Mach 2. And what we see her doing here is basically she's come to confront Kitty. And she's basically saying, you know, and she actually has these electromagnetic powers now, or always did, but they seem to be much more concentrated now. And she is talking about, you know, basically, you know, you're kind of a traitor, you know, you're letting them do this to us. You know, how could you do this? You know, she actually is using her electromagnetic ability to freeze Kitty in a place where she can't even phase out of it. And so we see that, you know, we have Kitty kind of representing the, you know, the almost ideal side of the mutant struggle, and then we see Nomi, who is obviously now going to be part of the extremist viewpoint, that no, a war does need to happen. Whether it's a war we can win or not is something of a question that Nomi even asks herself, but it's a war that needs to happen, because otherwise this is just going to be, you know, they're just going to cut us, you know, they're just, you know, they're going to chop us off at the heels at, you know, any chance that the humans get, they will try to annihilate us. And so Kitty is, of course, you know, stuck in this, you know, very, you know, kind of quagmire-ish situation where she, you know, kind of doesn't know which end is up. All she has is her own moral compass to guide her. And so, I mean, this, you know, Brian Wood has made, you know, he's made Kitty such a strong force in this. I mean, truly a force to be reckoned with. I mean, this is someone who, you know, kind of was, you know, kind of moony-eyed over, you know, when back, you know, in the initial run of Ultimate X-Men, you know, someone who was kind of moony-eyed over first Iceman, and then was really moony-eyed about Spider-Man, about Peter Parker, and, you know, now she is, you know, she's a true leader. And we see all of these different sides, and we see, you know, all of the, you know, the various other, you know, characters in here, you know, how we see Bobby has been affected by what Husk has done. You know, we see Jimmy, and, you know, we see Rogue. Have yet to see Johnny Storm, though, so little, you know, feeling a little lost on that one. But again, this is just a really solid issue, because where it's leading towards seems to be something that is very much in Brian Wood's wheelhouse, which is a story of kind of displaced persons. And, you know, because I have not ever read DMZ, I haven't read a single issue. I'd like to. But, you know, especially after reading his work on this stuff, because this is just really, really good work. Felipe Andreas, his art is, it's not to everybody's taste, that's for sure, but I thought it was actually really terrific. I like the kind of almost chalky type of look that he gives to it. It's very kind of, you know, kind of almost impressionistic, and, you know, it's very, you know, it works in the context of this issue. I think that sometimes it's the things that, you know, it's like when you think about, you know, just kind of Becky Cloonan stepping in for Greg Capullo on Batman, or Cloonan stepping in for, you know, people like Yannick Paquette or Marco Rudy on Swamp Thing in the annual. It seems out of place for, you know, who normally does the work, but for the issues that they have brought in on, it actually works better than who would normally be doing this. So this, you know, this whole story and the direction that it's heading in here, it's got me, again, still very, very excited about this book. I'm really looking forward to where it's going to go, and I just thought that this issue was terrific. Great read. 4.5 out of 5 for Ultimate X-Men 18.1. So moving along, so we have Ultimate Spider-Man, number 17. And this is basically, what did Spider-Man do during the war? Which is, or I should say, the conflict in Wyoming. Because we have him, stepping in and trying to step up and be, a real, to be a real superhero. But but we also have Spider-Girl, or Spider-Woman, excuse me, who is trying to keep, trying desperately to keep his ass alive in this conflict. And he seems to be doing pretty well on his own, but, she's saying things like, I will pay you $1,000 to get out of here. Just go. But, Miles is not having any of that, because he knows that this is where he needs to be. With his powers, he knows that this is where he should be. But back home, we have some really interesting issues going on with Papa Morales and Mama Morales, because we have this moment where they're basically, where Dad and some other citizens are being hauled away by S.H.I.E.L.D. Because they tried to cross into their neighborhood, and while the barricades were up, and he's banging on the door saying, I'm an American citizen, all of a sudden, boom, everything, the paddy wagon, whatever you want to call it, is kind of shot up, and who ends up breaking him out but Hydra. And this leads to a very tense and suspenseful moment back at home once the barricades do open up again, and Mom heads in, and there is Dad with one of Hydra's rifles, and she's just kind of looking down at it, and she is very afraid, because Dad he saw firsthand exactly what Hydra did to the people that were driving driving the truck, that they just executed them. So what has happened? What happens here? And that we don't know. We have to wait. And then, again, we see, Spidey kind of flying by the seat of his pants throughout this whole conflict, and he does make it out alive, but, he does make it to a place where he's way, way far away from where everybody else is. And he's just kind of out in the middle of this field, in the middle of nowhere in Wyoming, and all he wants to do is get home. So, I mean, what's coming up next here? This, while being a really good issue, is a really not good ending, because this technically is the final issue of United We Stand. So, while the Ultimates, that last issue, the last issue of this arc, of this event for the Ultimates was very epic in quality, this was much more personal, which works, but I would preferred it had this happened before this, this issue had come out before that issue, because you can't, because this is definitely a coda to what's going on, and I can appreciate that, but again, it feels like this should have taken place, during the action, as opposed to kind of, and it does take place during the action, but we do have kind of, we don't have, Spider-Man's eyes directly on the aftermath, but we do, obviously, if you've been following the Ultimate Universe in all of its books, you see, we obviously have found out what's happened. So the good guys won, but here's Spidey just kind of walking away from the whole thing. So, and that also brings up another question: is that why would, when they're doing, when Cap, who wants to be dedicated to this kid's training and him being an effective superhero, not fail him like he feels that he failed Peter Parker, why didn't they do a head count before they left? Or maybe they did. Because this, again, the whole kind of homecoming idea is, like I said, we don't know how exactly he will get home. And we don't even know if this particular, issue will continue in the sense of, well, we don't know how Miles gets home. So by and large, it was a really good issue. Just had a problem with, like I said, just the timing of it seemed off to me. So 4 out of 5 for Ultimate Spider-Man number 17. Sorry, just lost my place for a second here. So now on to the other big number one, for this week for Marvel Now, and that is Indestructible Hulk number 1. Of course, the new Hulk series by Mark Waid and Lineal Yu. And this was... I have tremendous faith in Mark Waid. I'm actually kind of reading at this moment. I went out over the weekend, bought some comics. Obviously bought my comics, but also went to another place where I go to get like the quote-unquote cheap comics, because they got them the 50-cent bin to use bookstore, and there's a comic shop, right down the place, and they just bring in, whatever. So I scored a really good deal on some initial like first and second arc issues of Morning Glories for $1 a piece, but also found some Mark Waid JLA. So been having some fun with his stuff. Anyway, and obviously what he's done with Daredevil, he is bringing definitely the same kind of sensibilities to this title. Is that we basically start off with Maria Hill. She's in, some diner in some hick town somewhere in, nowhere America, and all of a sudden, and she's, actually communicating with Phil Coulson, who we know is now part of the Marvel Universe, and we have, she's reading up on the Hulk, and of course, speak of the devil, and the devil appears, and here comes Bruce Banner, because Bruce Banner has basically got a proposition for Maria Hill and for S.H.I.E.L.D. Because what we're seeing here is that, kind of like as we saw with Daredevil, we're seeing Bruce Banner come to, he's kind of finished with the stages of grieving for himself. That he's, that essentially, obviously, the whole Hulk, just turning into the Hulk, obviously, has to cause him a great deal of grief, but he's finally come to a point, at least it seems, for now, he's come to a point of acceptance, the final stage of grief. And he accepts that he is going to be the Hulk. And instead of it being a curse, let's try and make it a gift. Because Bruce Banner has a lot to offer. Because there's this great moment that they have while they're talking in this diner, where he's talking about who is the great guy, who was the big brain who had this great idea that helped kind of put an end to the whole Avengers versus X-Men thing, and of course Maria Hill starts to say Tony Stark. He's like, Tony Stark. Because it's nice to see, because we have this motif of the ticking clock on the wall, and we see, this is a really suspenseful sequence while they're in the diner together, because we have no idea, because all these things are kind of happening around Bruce that we think, shit, this might set him off, and, the whole idea of him being the ticking time bomb, but, just even kind of the outburst of Tony Stark, is like, he's just mad that, people like Stark and Reed Richards and Hank Pym, they're the ones that, well, not so much Hank Pym, but definitely, Stark and Richards, they are the big brains that get all the glory, And of course, Bruce Banner is the one who says, you know, I'll be lucky if, you know, if what I get, and when I die on my tombstone, it'll just read Hulk Smash. You know, that's essentially it. You know, that is my legacy right now, as of this moment. But you put me to work for you when I'm Banner in Banner time. I will create things, I will design things for you that will blow you away. There will be amazing inventions. And when it's time for the Hulk, don't think of him as a bomb, think of him as a cannon. And we're going to display that now because the Mad Thinker is in town, and he is going to dry run some of his new tech. And because that's the reason that Bruce Banner is there, is because he knows that S.H.I.E.L.D. is there, and they are they're going to hit the Mad Thinker with everything that they've got. But Bruce knows this is basically a suicide run with the kind of tech the Mad Thinker has if they're just going to throw S.H.I.E.L.D. personnel at it. So he says, well, it's time for me to get angry. You know, and he says, but if something happens to me while I'm, you know, under your supervision, and, you know, I have all of these files, and he shows them to Hill, and, you know, they're all backed up here, and they will all go, and he shows the phone to Hill. We don't see who's on the phone. It all goes to this man. We don't know who that man is. Who is the mystery man that, you know, is maybe a benefactor of, you know, Banner's new life. So we have, you know, this new direction that he wants to take. And so we have, you know, this massive, you know, battle between the Hulk and the Mad Thinker. And it's not, you know, there's no, Hulk doesn't have any dialogue in this particular battle sequence. And there's some iffy art. It does, you know, some of it looks a little bit off. You know, some of the stuff, actually the quieter moments artistically work better. So it's strange to have, you know, kind of the big dynamic moments of the book really become, you know, kind of where the art starts to get a little sketchier. But, you know, Yu is still a really good artist, and, you know, he's able to communicate the ideas. And this is, I would say, easily a prime example of what Marvel Now's #1 issue should be like. They're not totally dependent upon everything that came before, but of course we do have some, we have to have some reminders, we have to have some context of where they are in the universe. So it's just, this was pretty much a perfect #1 issue. You can totally jump into this, get on board. If you have any inkling of who some of these other characters are, which, you know, a lot of comics fans, they might not, but this was just truly, it was a terrific first issue for Marvel Now. It was a terrific issue all around. I mean, there were 3 titles from Mark Waid this week, and they were all awesome. And this is just the first of them. So, like I said, the only thing that I do kind of get concerned about, and this is normally kind of when I see Leinil Hugh's art, is that sometimes, like I said, it can get kind of crazed, which is why I don't necessarily know if he's the right guy for this, but he's definitely a good artist. It's just that sometimes things can get a little off. So I have to give this a 4.5 out of 5, leaning more towards 5, because this is a really, really, really smart book. So just terrific work by Waid again, because it's just, he's just turned into one of those guys. And I think even a Steed and Mrs. Peel issue came out this week, if I'm not mistaken. So that would be 4 titles by Waid, but I don't read the Steed and Mrs. Peel stuff, so because I read the first issue and I'm like, I don't like this at all. It's just not my thing. So, excellent issue. So now we are going to move on to the independent titles. And of course, with the independents, as normal, I will start off with Valiant. Valiant, 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 so happy Valiant. So we're going to start off with Exo Manowar number 7. So basically we have Eric, we have Alexander Dorian, and we have Ninjak, who are basically, they're exploring the possibilities of essentially teaming up against the Vine, because, you know, Dorian knows he knows all the secrets, he knows what's going on, and he knows that, you know, there's no way that the Vine will allow a human to possess Shanhara. And not even, I mean, it's not even so much that the Shanhara armor is such a threat, or that they consider it to be such a holy relic, but because it's essentially just symbolically, it's an indication that humans just might have the, you know, be able to defeat the Vine. So of course Armageddon has been triggered by just, you know, Eric's existence in the armor. And so we have some really tense moments between Eric and Dorian, and once Ninjak kind of comes in again, because he's been listening to this from afar, and he kind of breaks in again, and, you know, there's this great moment where he actually holds you know, his sword to Dorian's throat and is kind of using him as a shield, and, you know, Eric, he's got his his hand blasters ready to go, and he calls him a coward, and, you know, Ninjak just has this great line. It's like, why does everybody call me a coward when all I'm doing is employing a good stratagem, you know? And there's some truth to that. So it was kind of that was a neat kind of back and forth moment between the two of them. And so basically he's giving Dorian a chance to prove that, you know, that yes, that basically, you know, the people that hired him from MI6 are indeed in on this, and once he returns the Man-of-War armor to them, that they will kill Ninjak. So he, you know, through his communication ability, through this kind of telepathy, this kind of telepathic ring that he has with the Vine, he's able to communicate and give them false information to feed to Ninjak to prove that yes, they are indeed lying to him and that they're setting him up. So this is, we've got the team up now. We've got Exo, and we've got Eric and Ninjak going to work together to stop this, you know, Vine invasion. But back, you know, in, you know, on the Vine home planet, or on one of their, you know, we have, you know, their soldiers are wearing this very Man-of-War-esque kind of what they call commando armor, and they are training against the slaves that they use to, you know, blow off certain parts of their body, so that, you know, to really kind of test their kind of combat acumen. Of course, they're only using it against slaves that aren't allowed to fight back, but they are allowed to run. So I guess moving targets as well. So, but this is, you know, part of what the Vine is putting in place to assault Earth. And here we have, but we also at the same time we have Ninjak and Eric getting ready to storm MI6 headquarters. It's so good. I just love Valiant's work. Like I said, I mean, with the exception of Shadow Man, they're doing such tremendous work right now. Every book is really involving. There's a lot of, this issue is kind of exposition heavy, but it's an early issue, and it's kind of necessary. So it works in this context. It works better than it would be if we just had, you know, if this was just kind of, you know, a number, you know, in the teens or something like that, and all of a sudden we decided to go back to wherever and get all this expositionary dialogue, expositionary moments. So I see where they're going with this, and it's just, it works so well. It's a terrific, terrific, terrific read. 4.5 out of 5, easy for Exo Manowar number 7. Again, if you're waiting for the trades for Valiant, you will not be disappointed once you get them, because this is top tier work right now that they're doing. I mean, as far as, you know, a company that has, what, 6 titles right now, you know, all but one are excellent. So, terrific stuff. This brings me to Harbinger, number 6. Now here we're returning to Chris Hathaway, who is the girl that, it's the lucky cigarette. She, you know, that Peter violated in the first issue of this by making her fall in love with him. And we have her dealing, finally, we see her dealing with, you know, the aftermath of that. And the first place that we see her dealing with the aftermath of that is the collapsed kind of tenement building that's where Joe was living and just kind of staying under the radar, and of course, you know, was killed by the Harbinger Foundation and by Harada, you know, on Harada's orders. And, you know, she just knows instinctively that because Joe is here, that this building is now just rubble, that he had something, that Peter has something to do with this, because he's just an asshole. So in her mind, he is a total bastard. But their story together is not over yet, because as we find out more about Chris's home life, that they have certain medical expenses that they need to pay, because it's not real. I think, you know, the father had a stroke, and, you know, there's, you know, they have, like almost triple, almost, 100K in medical bills. And, you know, there's nothing that she can do about it, because she's just essentially just a kid. Or she's young anyway. And, but all of a sudden, here comes Faith, who is now, of course, she's now calling herself Zephyr. That's her superhero code name. And Faith, you know, basically what we're seeing here is we see the kind of smarts that Chris has. We're first really introduced to that idea, that she is an incredibly smart and angry young woman. But we also see what incredibly kind-hearted, huge heart that Faith has, and that she totally believes in Peter, and that, you know, and she brings Chris to Peter. And Peter's first wish is, because he's obviously still recovering from the events of the previous issue, he's kind of in bad shape, but he's healing up, and what he initially asked Chris to do is to kill him. And Chris even rebukes that, saying, even if I were to kill you, that's still me doing what you want me to do. So, up yours with that idea. But when she finds out that Harada had something to do with, you know, that basically Joe is dead and he's the one responsible for it, at least, you know, indirectly responsible for it, and that there are people that are watching Chris, both from PRS and from the Harbinger Foundation, that she comes up with a plan where she can basically use Peter's abilities to make her family well, at least somewhat, financially, which is to have them rob a bank. And of course, this is, you know, it's all of like the, you know, it's very much kind of a young person's rhetoric as she walks into the bank, announcing that, you know, basically, you know, you're all being ripped off anyway, so I'm not even stealing your money, I'm stealing the federal government's money, you're not going to lose anything, and just all of kind of like, you know, almost quote-unquote kind of liberal talking points from her. You know, almost like kind of revolutionary talking points. And, you know, she even sets up a trap for, you know, Harada and for the PRS people. And basically we have the beginning of the three of them, of Peter and Faith and Chris, teaming up to go up against, to be the Renegades, as the title brings forth, that that the cover promises that these are, you know, that they are the Renegades. And so we have again another solid team up like we had in Bloodshot, where we have these three very disparate people, but, you know, by working together, by becoming, you know, a unit, they make each other stronger, even if, you know, Chris still resents the living shit out of Peter. But, you know, she, you know, it's just, this was just, it was fantastic. And we have this artist, Phil Briones, who does this wonderful, very Alan Davis-esque art. So this is just, again, another incredibly strong issue for this book. An absolute 4.5 out of 5 for Harbinger number 6. Please get this stuff as soon as is possible. Moving along to Dynamite Comics, we have the Shadow number 9. Now, we had the Shadow number 8 just last week. Or was it 2 weeks ago? I can't remember. But anyway, so we have the Shadow number 9, and we have a continuation of, not of the story, because that issue number 7 was kind of a one-off, but we have issue 8. Aaron Campbell is back on art, but his art looks a lot better in this issue. And basically what we have is the Shadow and Miles are tracking murderous gun runners throughout Europe, you know, from Paris to Spain, all in the midst of the Spanish Civil War. And we have Lamont kind of romancing this beautiful soldier, you know, who is like one of the kind of one of the heads of the Spanish military intelligence. And we have some really nice Shadow moments, some really nice Shadow beats, especially at the beginning. There's a great Shadow moment at the beginning. And he ruminates a lot about, you know, of course, you know, still, you know, his inability to read certain people is, you know, still kind of messing with his head. But sometimes, especially in the case of this woman that he's romancing, that some things are better left found out the old-fashioned way. You know what I'm saying? But in the midst of all this action, you know, he's tracking the gun runners. It all has to do with this poor, innocent couple in France who were murdered by these gun runners, which is why he's so, you know, insistent upon tracking them. He could care less about the Civil War. He knows that either side, basically, there isn't either side to this conflict that will benefit the Spanish people. So he knows that's not his job there. That, you know, his vengeance is not required there. His vengeance is required in pursuing the gun runners and eliminating them. And at the very end of the issue, because we have some, you know, a neat kind of chase scene where, you know, Lamont basically uses a champagne bottle to throw off his attackers, of course, but it's Shadow style, but Lamont class, you know. But we have ultimately here at the end, he runs into this Englishman who is fighting on the side of the revolutionaries and not the fascists, led by Generalissimo Francisco Franco is still dead. Sorry, just a bit of a good old Saturday Night Live flashback there. Anyway, so, you know, he's fighting against Franco's army. And it turns out, when he introduces himself to Cranston, that he is George Orwell. And this seems to be part of the reason that Lamont is there, is to somehow has to do with Orwell. Now, this is, of course, where the book totally unfolded for me. It was like, yeah, this is really interesting. Wait, what the fuck is this? Whoa. And what is even harder to swallow than the fact that he met George Orwell is that when he accidentally bumps into Orwell, which is how they meet, he says, "My bad." This is the 1930s. Or the 1940s. This was the 1940s. Nobody's saying "my bad" in the 1940s, especially not Lamont Cranston. You know, this is, again, you know, because Victor Gischler, of course, he's continuing his run here, and and that, in a sense, is the problem with this book, is that Gischler, while it's like he will fill so much of the issue with these really cool shadowy moments, but then he'll totally fuck it up, almost totally, because this issue is better than the last issue. But this, you know, that moment where he says "my bad," it's like he just, you know, when you're dealing with time periods, you have to have language that reflects the time period. You can't use modern slang you know, it's like, you know, if you're putting on a Shakespeare play, and, you know, and instead of, you know, Hamlet saying "to be or not to be," it's just, "what the fuck should I do?" You know, it's that out of place. Of course, okay, it's not that out of place. That's obviously an extreme example, but it is similar in the way that a lot of authors don't seem to have a good grasp on the voice of how people used to speak, and can only really communicate in the way that they know how to speak now. So that, to me, was just, it was an egregious mistake, and really, really pulled me out of the book, even though it's at the very end. So, despite the fact that it's at the end, makes it no less offensive. So, this was, I'd have to give it a 3.5 out of 5, because that really took it down a lot. Kind of almost leaning more towards 3, because the more I think about it, the more I get upset. But still, like I said, because of the other beats, it's still a pretty strong comic. So, again, this is one of those I'm starting to really worry about, man. Because, I mean, so many authors have had the Shadow right, and I appreciate they're trying to inject some new life into this or something like that, but whatever, it's not working in this respect. So, moving along. So now we go to DC. Wonder Woman, number 14. What we have here is, you know, as we had with the last issue, is that, you know, this character of Sriracha, or Soraka, however exactly it's supposed to be pronounced, she is attacking Wonder Woman because, you know, she is protecting Hera, because Soraka is one of the quote-unquote demigods. You know, she's one of the children of Zeus, like Lennox and, you know, the child of Zola that Hermes has taken. And we see, basically, we get invited to see some of Soraka's backstory. You know, that basically all of these kind of demigods, they are being punished by Hera for the infidelities of her husband. So it's just, it's really terrifying, of course, what she does to Sriracha. Soraka and what she does to her mother, by basically, you know, because they're in the desert, wherever, and she just kind of flays the skin off of their bones using the sand, and then reforms Soraka using the sand. So her whole life is basically, you know, it's controlling of the wind, but it's this very, very, very painful birth. And what we see in this issue, more importantly than anything else that happens here, is that we see truly what is Wonder Woman's greatest power, and that is her power of compassion. And that is what she uses ultimately, I shouldn't say uses, but that is what she reveals in order to allow Soraka to come around to her side, basically saying, you know, Hera is not the only one that has, you're not the only one that Hera has wronged, you know, and, you know, you and I are sisters, and there's no reason for us to fight like this. We're too, you know, there are too few of us, and we're too important to, you know, to really be at odds. And, you know, despite what you may think of me and my own mission and me protecting Hera, it is ultimately for the greater good. And, you know, and it's a really lovely moment that they have together, where, you know, she's not saying that necessarily what she's doing is right, but what she is doing is important, and that it's, you know, that needs to happen. So then we cut from them kind of not reconciling, because that's, you know, that would be wrong. That would be the wrong way to put it. But we go back to Olympus, and we have the discussion amongst the gods there as to kind of what's going on. And all in the meantime, we have this huge, strange, unusual character that we don't know who they are yet. You know, is also apparently another child of Zeus. And, you know, we have someone, you know, we have this mysterious, malevolent character kind of guiding this this demigod back into kind of, you know, into, you know, the modern world, and, you know, letting him know that he's been down there for 50,000 years or something to that effect. And, you know, that's all, you know, all this time that he's, you know, he hasn't been frozen in this ice, he's been trying to escape it. So he's, you know, for, you know, however many thousands of years it is, that's a long time to be, you know, shackled like that. And he wants revenge. And, you know, of course the gods are, you know, kind of still arguing about, you know, exactly what is going to go on here, and that how Wonder Woman is still a threat to them, or at least a threat to some of them. War definitely, War definitely believes that. They don't refer to each other really as their name, well, except for a couple, you know. Dionysus is addressed as such, Apollo is addressed as such, Aphrodite is addressed as such. But, you know, but they're not the only gods that are very interested in what's going on, because at the very end of the issue, we are thrown up to the place that we call New Genesis. So things are going to get pretty fucking crazy from here on out. Tony Akins does some really nice art here. Again, his style is improving. Still missing Cliff Chang. It does hurt it a little bit. But, you know, this it's a really good, you know, it's a really good issue. 4 out of 5 for Wonder Woman number 14. Just like I said, it's wonderful to see Wonder Woman in not necessarily merely a defensive mode, but where she's trying to reach out to her potential enemies and turn them into a powerful ally. So now on to the great books of the week. All of the books that reached the 5 out of 5. So we're going to start with, to me, were kind of the more simple ones to pick out. And first one we'll talk about is Daredevil number 20. So, you know, we get some info about Coyote. We have this, I mean, this awesome moment on, you know, the beginning of the first page, at the first page where, you know, we get the sense that Daredevil is like, okay, well, you know, despite the fact that my head is not attached to my body, I still have got this guy right where I want him. Or that's, you know, this is how I know I've already won, type of thing. So, I mean, it's just that, yeah. So, and we have Coyote explaining exactly what his purpose is. And that, you know, he has kind of co-opted the Spot's abilities in order to basically expand certain influence around the globe, to work with, you know, drug cartels, terror cells, what have you, you know, by using his teleporting abilities. But the real game here is in human trafficking. And, you know, we see Matt, you know, using his you know, litigious acumen, and, you know, how he's trying to really get as much information out of Coyote before, you know, he makes his move with his body, that he is maneuvering around headless. And then, though, we get this huge reveal, because we see how the human trafficking business actually has been working, how Coyote has made it work. And because we're seeing all of these essentially slaves that he's acquired for various purposes, and they are, you know, they're all shown kind of from, you know, kind of here down, doing their work, whatever, you know, slaving away at whatever they're doing. And then, of course, we have this moment where Coyote opens this door, and there are, like, dozens upon dozens of heads in there. Living people without heads. I mean, it's just their heads. And then we see that their bodies are the ones that are doing the work. And, you know, they're just going out of their minds, really. And then Daredevil does make his way into this kind of generator room, in which we do find the Spot. And he is hooked up to these great big machines, where it seems that, indeed, that that Coyote is actually, like, he's siphoning the Spot's abilities. So Coyote is not the Spot. He is, you know, someone quite, you know, this is someone quite different. Who he actually is, we don't know yet. But, you know, we have this moment where it seems like the day is saved, but it's not. It's far from it. There's still some very serious stuff going on. And, of course, you know, back in New York, we have Kirsty McDuffie having to deal with, you know, some, you know, kind of fallout of her public relationship with Matt Murdock. You know, her being an ADA, and basically her being kind of totally rebuffed when she is asked to, you know, when she asks to see what they can do about, you know, getting people to maybe take a closer look at Daredevil, because, you know, she's got it on good authority from Foggy in the previous issue that there's something wrong with him. And that's why he's kind of been acting the way that he has lately. Of course, as we know, this is all a setup of Coyote's, and how he's been able to manage all of this. And this is just, I mean, from start to finish, this is just a tremendously suspenseful and really smart book. Chris Samney knocking the art out of the park here. And just, I mean, these two together have yet to really do any wrong. In fact, everything they've done together so far has been pretty fucking great. So, I mean, Daredevil number 20, 5 out of 5. Hawkeye number 4. Sadly, David Aja not around for this issue, but we have Javier Pulido, who does, it's not similar, it's not quite as, it's not quite as fluid, but it has kind of almost a Marcos Martin type of influence, which to me likey. So, we have, basically, this is called The Tape, and it's all about this videotape that documents Hawkeye actually killing 2 people by putting his arrows through their eyes and presumably into their brains. Because the first question that is asked in the book, while we see this still of what Hawkeye has just done, is Kate Bishop asking Clint if he's ever killed anyone. And of course, you know, he says no. But then here comes S.H.I.E.L.D. They come swooping down. They bring him up to the helicarrier, and you know, they say, okay, the tape is out in the open, and they're going to auction it off in Madripoor, which of course is a land where we know that anything goes. Anybody has any inkling of what Madripoor is, this issue is a pretty good introduction as to how Madripoor works. It is controlled by, essentially, the whole economy there seems to thrive on criminal activity and the allowance of criminal activity. So Clint, doing kind of his kind of undercovery bit, goes to Madripoor, immediately accosted, but then, of course, you know, he's Clint Barton, he's an Avenger, he's Hawkeye, he fights his way out of it, and he's able to, you know, get through there. And, you know, but back home, right before he's left, you know, he has kind of this, you know, these strange beats that he kind of ruminates over on the flight over to Madripoor about the last thing that Kate said to him, which is this reference to baggage that she's given him, or that he's given her. So, you know, we're still wondering kind of what this relationship is. You know, is this, you know, mentor-student? Is she crushing on him? You know, what to make of all of this. And Hawkeye, once he steps foot into this massive hotel where, you know, and casino where where this auction is going to go down, where he has Maria S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Amex Black card, which is the kind of the holy grail, apparently, of credit cards, because there is literally no limit. It's worth, you know, potentially billions of dollars. And this tape, they know, because it could expose a hero in a very, very negative light, it could, you know, that, you know, criminals will pay lots and lots of money to get it. So he's got to try to go there incognito, which does not work out so well because, like I said, as soon as he steps foot in the hotel, he says, you know, I'm just kind of, you know, his internal monologue is he's kind of sticking out like a sore thumb. And of course he is, because immediately bag is put over the head, he's whisked off into one of the rooms, he starts getting worked over, and these thugs, they are working for Madame Mask. And we have this moment where, you know, he says something about his Amex Black card, and how, well, they couldn't find it on him. And So Madame Mask, asks, so where is this vaunted card? And there's this panel where you just see from here down, you just see this little smile on Clint's face. So you kind of have an idea of where he's hiding it. So Madame Mask gotta reach in there and get it out. And indeed she does. So then we have, Agence Byzantine, we have the Kingpin, we have Madame Hydra, and other criminal organizations all bidding for this tape that will expose this, murderous activity of one of the vaunted Avengers. And Madame Mask whips out the Amex Black card and bids $1 billion. Everybody's super pissed. She gets the tape and heads back to her room. And admittedly, once she got back to the room, I kind of saw this coming, but it didn't matter because I was so happy that it was. I'm not going to spoil it, but if you do get your hands on it and you just look at the last page and you look at the preparation that this person had to do in order to do what they did, it's just one of those things because there's so much detail, all of these different objects and things like that that are used, that had to be used, and it's just like, oh, that's so awesome. So again, I mean, Fraction making an incredibly fun, smart, supremely entertaining issue with a really nice kind of to be continued moment. It's not a cliffhanger per se, but it is an emotional one, I would say. So again, I didn't mind that David Aja wasn't on this because his style works for this book. Javier Pulido's style works for this book. So again, 5 out of 5 for Hawkeye number 4. So moving along, the Spider number 6. This has been, at least for me, if you were to pick one Dynamite series that you should absolutely be picking up, especially if you're into kind of the neo-pulp stuff like that I am, and if you're not, you really should be, because the Spider is fantastic. Because basically what we have here is we have a little bit of background, a little bit of a flashback here to Richard Wentworth's time when he was a soldier in Afghanistan, and he's working with, he's going up against this terrorist that just blew up a bomb in the Green Zone, and he's working with this guy, this Lieutenant Jackson, who is very, very, very zealous to get this guy. Of course, Wentworth is a superior officer, but once they go in, they do their business. Wentworth tries to kind of rein Jackson in, but he's not having any. And of course, there is some quote-unquote collateral damage, as Jackson has just basically killed an innocent civilian in order to get the terrorists they were going after, and he just refers to him as just basically just another terrorist, that would have, eventually, even if they weren't one now, they would have grown up to be. And this, of course, Wentworth, pistol whips him, essentially. And then we cut to the present day, where we see that Jackson is in a warehouse getting worked over by this guy, who is a representative of the Wingman. The Wingman is a villain here, and how he somehow interfered with the plans of the Wingman. But here comes the Spider to take some of these guys out. One of them gets away, but he saves Jackson doesn't really like the fact that he just had to, because this is a guy that he still thinks is a real piece of shit. So the two of them, well, Wentworth, who is, he's now become kind of the financier of the Spider. That's how he puts it anyway. That's why so many people think that he is the Spider, even though it's been disproven a number of times that he is in fact not the Spider. But that Jackson knows about something that's going down. But we also see what the Wingman is capable of, is that he controls birds. And he controls them very, very murderously. And we have a bank robbery that is essentially masking as an assassination attempt on a mayoral candidate. We have some nice character bits with Wentworth, where he's meeting up with his ex. Of course, he's now married to the police commissioner, and getting some information from her so that he can save lives. And everything kind of turns on its head. And Jackson actually proves to be a pretty stand-up guy. And as he accounts for this, as Wentworth accounts for this, he is basically saying that this is a guy who is in search of redemption, and maybe he deserves another shot after all. So will he become part of the Spider's crew? That remains to be seen, but it'd be interesting going forward from here if he does, because part of what the Spider is about is not just punishing the guilty, but also allowing for people to redeem themselves. So this, again, just amazing pulpy fun, and I swear to God, Colton Worley, his work is absolutely in the running for Artist of the Year. This is a guy that is just, he is amazing. The work that he does it's so photoreal, and it's so compelling, and it's just beautifully, beautifully done. So, again, 5 out of 5 for The Spider #6. Pick it up. I'm telling you. Start getting this series, because it is that good. All of the issues so far have been amazing. It's at the top of my, it's either the best or one of the picks of the week every week. So second to last, at least for this edition, we already know that my pick of the week was Amazing Spider-Man number 698. So I guess this is the second runner-up, and that is, surprisingly, Batwoman number 14. Now, this is not to say that I've ever really been hating on Batwoman, but this is the first issue since the first issue where it has been a great issue, where I can just honestly say everything about this book worked for me. Because we have, the confrontation between, well, not the confrontation, but the these moments between Pegasus, who of course is, all sorts of fucked up by, the child of Medusa, all sorts of fucked up by Falchion, before he met his untimely demise. And we see it's a very, very prose-style book. And we've seen that in the past here, as far as, and particularly in this arc, in the World's Finest arc, that, we have, this kind of dual narrative with both Wonder Woman and Batwoman, sort of constantly being amazed by the other. And they give, Pegasus, who is suffering, but he's immortal, but his wounds will never heal. And again, compassionately, Wonder Woman gives Pegasus a warrior's death, a clean death. But of course, all of the bad shit, the center, the apex of all this bad shit going on happens to be going on in Gotham City. So we go back there where, Killer Croc and Medusa and all of her kind of underlings are just tearing shit up left and right. Medusa is, turning, police officer on horseback to stone by touching her. And we have, again, another narrative. So we have a trio of narratives throughout this issue, because one of them is directly from Medusa. And we see what she has been preparing Waylon Jones for all of this time by gradually amping up his abilities. And wow. For one thing, I mean, of course, it's being drawn by J.H. Williams, so it looks gorgeous. But what is most important to me about this issue is that it was it was everything that this book needed to be. It was intriguing, it was exciting, it was terrifying at parts, and at the core of everything, though, there is this great emotional link that I finally felt to this book again. Because, again, the narrative structure has been kind of taking me out of things sometimes, because it seems to be so kind of overly verbose and so overly prose style that I don't get to connect in the same way that I would with just character speaking, and just not having to kind of always pay attention, to be confronted with an internal monologue, especially when you have. But this book packed such a huge emotional punch for me, and the final page was just like, oh my god, this is going to be fucking epic now. I mean, this is going to be awesome, because we do see splotches of Gotham's heroes here and there, and of course, this very typical J.H. Williams style framing, and it's just, this was tremendous. This was an amazing issue of Batwoman, and to me, it was like, oh, I'm so glad I'm still reading this, because I knew that someday it was going to get back to this kind of level of greatness, because I thought that the first issue was absolutely fantastic, but I've been waiting for an issue since then that left me feeling the same way. So, good on you guys. Hey, W. Hayden Blackman, J.H. Williams, you guys really rocked my socks off in this issue. So, absolute 5 out of 5 for Batwoman number 14. This brings me to the first runner-up, and had Spider-Man not come out this week, or not have been so good, this would have absolutely been pick of the week. And Ghost Critic, I'm looking at you right now, and I'm telling you, you are so in love with Daredevil. You're so in love with the work that Mark Waid and Chris Samney are doing on this book, and I totally understand. I'm feeling a lot of that love too. But I don't understand why you're not getting this book unless you're just waiting for the trade. In which case, I suppose that's fine, but get this trade, because I'm talking about Rocketeer, Cargo of Doom, number 4. It's Mark Waid and Chris Samney. And it's awesome. Because basically what we have here is we have all of these plot points, all of these kind of these three plot points that have been going on throughout the book, they're all coming to a head, which is that we have Cliff going around with his with his ray gun, flying around, you know, disintegrating dinosaurs. We have Sally and the G-Man Earl, who are trying to help the Rocketeer in whatever way that they can. You know, and they're in hot pursuit of, you know, they're trying to get into, you know, trying to find what's, you know, find Cliff so they can do whatever they can to help him. And then we also have, in hot pursuit of them, is Betty and Peavy in Cliff's plane. Because, you know, Betty's still uncertain about what's going on between Cliff and Sally. You know, there's still kind of her jealous mind is at work here. And so it's all of these groups coming together to help stop the dinosaur rampage throughout Los Angeles. And, you know, we have, basically, to make a long story short, the good guys win. And it's just, you know, we have this, you know, we have these moments between, you know, we see how, you know, all of these characters kind of, you know, moving on past what they're going to do. Sally had Earl pull some strings so that she can preferably be a pilot for the Army. You know, Cliff and Betty obviously have patched some things up here. And we have the great interplay between them. You know, Peavy is, you know, back to being kind of his old self again, not having to worry about, you know, all the craziness between Cliff and Betty. And we have Earl, who looks like he's going to be around for a while. But even though the good guys have won for now, there is still a threat that is looming on the horizon. And looks to be a pretty serious one. And this, to me, was just like, it was just delicious icing on an already perfect cake. Because you have Wade and his imagination and his love and affection for this character and for all of these characters just cutting loose, and you have the real star of this book is Chris Samnee. The artwork that he does on this book has just been tremendous. It's even better than what he's been doing in Daredevil, because it's completely unfettered. It's completely and totally fun. There's no real moments of total seriousness here. There are, of course, moments of danger and excitement, but there's no real moments of where, at least in this issue, where it's like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? I mean, because there are, you know, there are moments of danger, there's moments of excitement, but the stakes, and, you know, I would normally complain that a book that is supposed to be a really exciting and you know, kind of serious comic book deserves to have stakes. Well, there are stakes here, and those come more towards kind of this strange and frightening ending that they have here. But what we have is just a book that is just tremendously entertaining, pulpy fun. This is just an incredibly fun book, and it's terrifically beautiful as far as just the amount of exuberance that Samnee has obviously put into this, and just absolutely great 5 out of 5 work for the finale of the Rocketeer Cargo of Doom. Sadly, neither Wade nor Samnee will be working on the next Rocketeer book that IDW is going to be putting out, but as long as it keeps the Rocketeer flying, I'm all for that. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where I'm going to leave you for this evening. We are closing in on an hour 35. So, but there were a lot of books to talk about, a lot of great books to talk about. So, hey, thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking around. If you haven't checked out my previous week's vlogs, my two-parter from last week, might be a good time to check those out, just because there are, I think, maybe one comment per video on those, and I'm feeling kind of lonely. So where did my audience go? You don't seem, you know, I get compliments on how long these are, so what the hell's going on with you? Anyway, in all seriousness, of course, your first time here, please subscribe, because this is what you're going to be treated to pretty much week in, week out, is, you know, a long examination of all of the books that I read for this week. And I do tend to read a lot, so and just, you know, thumb it up, thumb it down, comment, let me know you were here, let me know what you think, give and take, that's what we're all about here. So we're done. Thank you again for tuning in. Thank you for sticking with me. For those of you who, I might even suggest, there are some plugins that you could probably get either for your smartphone or for your computer that will allow you to download. So let's say that you're in a car on your way to work or taking the bus or what have you. You can just pause the video after you've downloaded it to your memory card, your internal storage, whatever, and then you can pick up where it left off. Or if you're at your computer, again, there are plugins for, you know, your browsers where you can download the YouTube videos. Again, this is also suggestions. But, you know, because I want to hear from you. That's why that's part of why I do this. I do this because the exchange of ideas, the free flow of ideas between all of us. So let's keep the conversation going, people. So thank you again for watching. As always, it's much appreciated. I know that getting through these can be a bit of a thing, because I know that your time is precious. I totally understand that. So thank you for watching. Those of you who subscribed, thank you for subscribing. And just thank you. I love you all. So that's it for tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm James Donnelly. This is the Shadow Gallery. I am saying good night to you all and reminding you, as always, to stay in the shadows.